everyone. I see some familiar faces, some folks who are already using this service and probably looking to try to get more value out of it. And I see some new folks too, in terms of kind of learning about how to save some money in your general funds by having energy data. So, let me just kind of introduce how this came about. So, back in 2019, I founded a company, and we were looking at the way utilities bill customers for electric power. And what we found is utilities were billing customers in a way that customers had some opportunities to save a lot of money. I'll get into that in detail. But we started selling our service to schools in 2021, and we saw schools have a lot of success, saving a lot of money on their electric bills every month. And in the first couple of years, we had about 100 school building installations, 40 plus school districts using the product. And then we got feedback from schools in Wisconsin, we're a Wisconsin-based company, about, hey, this is great, we're saving this money on our electric bills. What else can we do with this data? And so we started talking to business officers at school districts, and they kind of helped us develop two new products in terms of allocation, where you can allocate food service, electricity expense to a food service budget, and you can potentially recover costs where third parties are using your buildings and facilities, and recover those costs as well. I'm going to talk about that, actually all three of those things today. And Scott's been nice enough to join us in terms of West Salem School District's been using the solution probably for 3 or 4 years now, one of our early customers. They've used the energy part really effectively, and they've also begun using the food service part, and are kicking the tires on can they recover costs on the third party part as well. So Scott will be able to tell us about some of his experiences and how the school district has used this product. So I want to start with kind of how electric utilities bill for power. So historically, you get an electric bill and you pay it, right? You pay for what you consume in terms of the power you're consuming. But in the last, I would say, 10 to 20 years, electric utilities have had a lot of, let's say, political things to not raise rates in their energy costs. But utilities still need to find ways to run their business and fund the infrastructure to build out more electricity to their end customers. So a lot of the way they've been doing that is putting charges in of what's called demand charges. And demand charges are essentially, if you look at the picture here, let's see if I've got a laser pointer. So under the curve here is kind of what you consume, so the energy that a building might consume. But there's also this, what was your highest peak of the day? And that peak the utility meter measures every 15 minutes and looks at your highest peak. The utility will sit there and measure your highest peak, and then they take the highest peak in the month and they bill you at that peak at a certain rate. So historically, that demand charge was a small percentage of your bill, maybe 5 or 10% of your bill. But today, that percentage of your bill from that one high 15-minute peak in the month is as much as 50% or more of your electric bill. And so that's part of the opportunity is if you have that data and you can understand when that peak occurs, you can actually save a lot of money on your electric bill. And we've been seeing schools doing this very effectively over the last 3 years. Another way to think about it, for those of you who aren't energy people, and a non-technical description is, and some of you have heard this before, but imagine you go to your favorite restaurant, and it's a Saturday, 5 p.m., you sit down, you order a steak, you consume your steak. The waiter brings the bill over to your table, you pay for what you consume, that steak, a $50 check, let's say, and you pay it. Well, then they come back to your table and they say, hey, you sat here during our busy time from 5 to 7 on a Saturday night. Here's another bill, the same amount for what you just paid to eat that steak. Now you're paying $50 to sit there that time period. Then they come back to your table and they say, wait a minute, 3 months ago you came to us on Saturday night with a party of 10. that was a much higher bill than when you sat here tonight. You're gonna pay a surcharge on that party of 10 for the next 12 months every time you come to the restaurant. So utilities, that is exactly how utilities are billing for electricity today. And I'll show you that kind of on the next slide. So this is a typical commercial and industrial bill, and a lot of school districts who are in the energy service territory in Wisconsin are on this CG3 tariff, which is the utility tariff with demand on it. And you can see on the bill here that there are two energy charges. There's on and off peak energy. So for this particular electricity tariff, it's 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. during weekdays is on peak, and 9 p.m. and overnight is off peak, and then weekends are off peak. So you pay a different amount for energy, and you can see it's 8.5 cents and 5.5 cents roughly per kilowatt hour. And you can see the energy charges, so it's about $14,000–15,000 for that energy that you consumed, right? But the bill is $32,000. It's like, whoa, I consume $15,000. Why is my bill $32,000? So that's where this demand charge concept comes in. And the utility will do what's a monthly demand peak. And so this particular bill was from April 12th to May 11th. And in that monthly span, the highest peak the utility measured during on-peak hours, and that was on, in this case, May 2nd at 10:45 a.m., was 774 kWs. The utility will bill $18 for every kW of that peak. So basically, every kilowatt you can reduce is worth 20 bucks, essentially, in this tariff. But you can see that is the largest charge on their bill. In fact, that one demand charge is as much as the whole energy consumption bill for the month. Also, you can see this customer demand, and that is your highest peak in the last 12 months. That is that, hey, you had a party of 10 at your restaurant, that surcharge that stays on your bill. So the utility does the same thing, where you can see the peak occurred for this particular client in July the prior year at 11:45 a.m., and that was their annual peak, and that's another charge. So that $2,500 stays on your bill from that one-time peak in a year. So if you can identify when and why these peaks happen, you can save a tremendous amount on your electric bill. And a lot of times, it's not necessarily with capital costs or capital equipment. It can be as much as control changes, maybe some behavioral changes, maybe scheduling changes for classes. There's a lot of different ways to get at that demand challenge. And so, let's see here. So going to kind of a general view, and then I'll have Scott talk a little bit about some specific, like most recent reports, Scott, that we've done. So the idea is, so this is kind of before and after picture. So this is one of our customers, and this was sort of before, like when we first installed the meters, and we got a really good look at their data. And you can see their building profile here, and kind of what it looks like, and how much energy, but also how much demand, is occurring. Through the process, and in this case, this is a year-over-year comparison at the same outdoor air temperature situation. You can see all the opportunity that was found. So there was a lot of energy off kind of waste overnight and on weekends. There was a really wide building profile that was really reduced, a lot of energy savings. And then you can see that peak was also reduced significantly. This piece right here is actually before the on-peak hours, so that one doesn't count on the monthly peak. This one does. So you can see that peak is almost, 50 to 100 kW less, which again, significant amount of savings. So Scott, I think what I'll do is I'll just pull up a few of your reports and we can kind of speak to that.
Yeah, so when I got back into this, I've been back in West Salem for about a year now, 9 months. This was already in place. I started using that data to watch and see where we are using most of our energy. We went through, did a little bit of behavioral analysis of like our kitchens, finding out that, the cooks come in at 5:30 in the morning and flip on the dishwasher, but yet don't use it until 9, 10 o'clock in the morning. And so it sits there for those 3 hours running and, you know, forces your peak up. But being able to watch, you know, how our air handlers are running, I found a couple of instances where, in our elementary school, I had an air handler that was kicking on and off during the night and over the weekends. Finding out it was a programming issue, even though it was supposed to be running on our unoccupied time frame, it was not. And so, you know, we don't notice that because I'm not there all day long. So being able to watch that data, help us to cut down on those energy bills, not only just the energy, but also the cost of it also. And so, and being able to use these graphs and show what we did in the past, we have the weather, graph on it also to see how we're reacting during different temperature changes and stuff like that. And so I spend a ton of time just kind of watching. I can pull mine up and it'll give me the exact hour of where we are today. And then I can graph that back, you know, a year, 2 days, whatever. My board really likes that I show that to them, so that they see that we are doing what we can possible, to conserve on our energy, keep our bills down, but also keeping an eye on that demand. Making sure that we're keeping that down also, because that can kill you. I mean, 50% of your bill is just that demand itself, it's not even the consumption. That really confuses people. That confused me for a long time until I was able to see this on our bills and being able to understand that a lot better. And so, like I said, I use this data all the time. I can find, you know, where we might have issue within our buildings that we're not seeing. But also we use it, we take it to our science rooms. Our kids are even studying it also. Understanding how their electric bills are working at home and stuff like that too, so. Here you can see, the top one, one's that from March. Yep. That's one day, being able to see when our peaks are, you know, when we have events that are going on. When he talked about the third party, we're toying with that a little bit now too. I'm lucky enough that I have a hockey rink that we own and manage, and so, we share it with our hockey association. And what the agreement is right now is they pay 60% of the, utilities bills for the time that they're in. We're gonna use this, information, not only make sure that, are we in the right spot with that, but are we overcharging that association? Or are we undercharging that association? So being able to use this information not only gives us the data to back up our charges and everything with that, but also making sure that we're in the right spot, making sure we're doing everything that we possibly can. So yeah, here's a couple daily peaks. A full billing cycle is one of them. I can go through and see if there's any time. I'm not sure what that real business with April was, but.
Easter. Right there's real Easter. Easter weekend, yeah.
And also in my program, on our middle school, we have a solar field up on our roof. And being able to see and graph that out also, we have our building load calculation, but then we also have our solar load calculation on there too. Do you have that one?
I do.
And so being able to go back to, our school board and show them that everything is working as it should be, but also being able to go to our investors that invested a bunch of money into this to provide our solar panels to it, being able to show them also what we're doing and how we're saving just by their generous donations.
Yeah, and just in this example, you know, this is the solar production every day in the billing cycle. And then this is actually the peak day where unfortunately it was very cloudy that day. And that's one of the reasons the building actually peaked, is because you can see there was essentially no solar generation on the 25th of March. But we're able to track both the energy and the demand savings, because again, demand is a big part of the bill. So is your solar helping knock down those demand charges, and if so, by how much? That's again, a school board question is, well, how much money is this saving us, right? We can give you, Scott's got the exact data to provide that information. a lot of calculations, a lot of work, it's just, yep, here it is. And Scott uniquely actually started using this a little bit in the classroom, which Scott, you mentioned a little bit. I'm curious if you just describe that as how that came about with the educators and you working in terms of just showing this as something like some sixth graders.
That actually came up from the students themselves in our middle school. Our schools got hit last year by a storm on July 28th. We had probably about baseball and softball sized hail that damaged about 60 of our solar panels up on the roof. So we have panels up there that have holes in them about the size of a softball. We figured with the graphing and everything, we're still running at about 80% of full load. So questions were coming from our middle school. It was actually our sixth grade science class. They started asking, well, what happened? You know, are they still working? Are we still saving energy? So then we started showing the graphs and showing the energy usage for the day, allowing them to see, you know, what it was like yesterday so that they can compare to, you know, what it was like outside and what things were happening inside the school. And then taking that data and showing exactly what we're doing.
Perfect. Thanks, Scott. Okay, so in addition to the energy savings, and I think just that's one example, we may cover some more, especially if there's Q&A after we've got some more examples we can talk about. I know John's here from Pewaukee, and he's got some data too to show. But I also wanted to make sure we spent time on sort of our two new, call it budgetary solutions for schools with the energy data that we're gathering. So one of the products is to be able to identify and allocate food service electricity expenses potentially to the food service budget. Schools are using this in multiple ways. One way they're using it is to, if they do have excess Fund 50 money, I know some schools, especially after COVID, had excess in their food service budgets they needed to spend down. But other schools are using this data to inform, you know, maybe when they do upgrades, maybe to inform school lunch pricing, maybe do other things with this information. So with the reporting, we're able to identify and allocate costs to run all the equipment in your kitchens, and in terms of a monthly amount. And that monthly amount comes in based in terms of runtime, the electricity used by the piece of equipment, but it also factors in this net cost per kilowatt hour, which is effectively also capturing demand into that calculation. So inherently, you know, kitchen actually causes schools to have that demand peak. So we're really able to recover some of that demand cost sort of inherently in the food services piece. And you can see in general, you know, and this is I don't think I actually have it on the slide here, but typically what we're seeing is about 25% of a school district's electric bill is related to food service. Sometimes it can be higher than that, but what we had seen in the past, and actually Oconomowoc School District presented this in the fall conference, is they have been doing an allocation for food service electricity already based on square footage. And it was like 2% of their building was kitchen, right? So they're like, okay, 2% of our electricity use. Well, they were underestimating by about, in their case, about 20 times, because the school, you know, the actual electricity portion of the school's bill, again, 25% is a very common number for food service to be consuming. So that allowed them to capture all that 25% rather than just a simple square footage calculation, which is pretty highly inaccurate when it comes to kitchen because of all the appliances and electricity associated with food service. So another way for schools to recover, and what we heard a lot from school facility leads, is we've got all these third parties using our facilities and our buildings, and it's costing our staff a ton of time custodial wise, it's costing us a lot on utilities, and you know, we're just kind of supporting all this, and really it's actually hitting the school's general fund. And sometimes it's even like for-profit businesses or third parties that are using the facilities and really not paying their fair share. So we created a service that integrates with your facility scheduling system at your school. And what we do is we have the facility scheduler put a tag as an outside event, whether it's, it might be community, it might be, for-profit, you can put the different tag you want on that. But then the report provided back to the business office and facility lead shows that cost on an event-by-event basis from an electricity standpoint. We've seen schools use this in a variety of ways as well, some to inform facility rental fees. Some are using it in their Fund 80 levy directly in terms of these were qualified community events or third-party events. Also, we're seeing some schools kind of slice and dice the data, and we provide it in a spreadsheet format. I'll show an example of this. Because the business officer, for example, might say, well, these for-profit businesses, we're gonna charge this rate. Whereas these community businesses, okay, it's community, we're gonna go lighter on them because we wanna make sure, we're good with our community. But we're seeing more and more of this, schools trying to recover these costs that are actually hitting their general fund. And what we find is, sometimes districts, I know like Steve at Wanakee School Board, but we've heard this from many sources. A lot of for-profit businesses are using our school facilities, and we're not recovering that money, and it's hitting the school's general fund, which fundamentally is just not right. It's a very simple idea. And this allows schools to really have the data to then go back and recover those costs that really shouldn't be hitting the school's general fund. So when we put all these together, and again, I'll pull up a couple examples of those reports here in a minute, but when we kind of put all those value propositions together, in terms of a total kind of opportunity summary for a school, and again, sometimes all three of these may not be a fit. There might be one or two of them that are a better fit for a school district. Sometimes districts can utilize all three. And the value proposition kind of comes down this way. So might be a little bit of an eye chart, but hopefully everyone can see this okay. We kind of take the average electric bill. And again, in this case, and this is an actual district, this is kind of a medium-sized district, a high school, junior high, and 4 elementaries. You can see kind of their average monthly bill size here. So they're paying about $60,000 a month in electric bills. About $750,000 a year for their electric spend. You can see the demand charges on those bills. It's almost half. It's about 45% in this case. So there's a lot of demand savings opportunity there in that $300,000. What we've seen with the energy portion that we covered at the top is with our about 100 school buildings we're in, we're seeing an average of about 15% bill savings just from $0 things like changing class scheduling maybe, or changing a set point in an HVAC system, or maybe some training of the kitchen staff so they're not just flipping on all the equipment, and kind of the list goes on and on. But through that process, we're seeing an average of 15%, which again, for a district, that's some real money monthly. That's $10,000 to reduce your electric bill monthly. Then, if you're doing the allocation, you can use the 25% number, which I threw out there. And again, we've actually seen this on the low side. We're seeing some 30 to 40% even in some districts where food services is very costly electrically. If you can redirect funds out of your Fund 50, and again, that's assuming there's excess there. If you don't, then it's really not as much of a benefit. But you can see that's a big amount of redirect that potentially could save that money in the general fund and free that money up for other things, whether it's operational projects, whether it's students, staff, any need, it really frees that up. And then third-party facility events. And we've seen the range on this anywhere from 5 to 30%. Sometimes schools will share a facility, like there's a YMCA, or maybe they have a big pool, or maybe there's other things there that are big drivers, so that can vary. If we use essentially a 15% value, that is, again, the school's ability to recover that amount each month. So in the end, for $60,000 electricity bill, if the school was able to utilize all three of these, they could effectively recover that or not see that hit the general fund of over half the bill every month. And then you can see, in this case, a $400,000 gross yearly savings in the general fund. Over 5 years, that's potentially a $2 million savings that this program could drive. Again, if the school was able to use all three of these, applications of the data. Okay, so I'm gonna pull up a couple of examples of, food service and the third-party facility events.
And one of the biggest things I've also seen with this, and, you know, working with our staff and doing a presentation with our staff, a little bit more behavioral stuff too. Understanding that I might turn the temperatures up a little bit, instead of that, you know, freezing cold 70 degrees, we might be at 71, 72. We're also seeing more lights being shut off, especially in the gyms, if you don't have occupancy sensors and stuff like that, but, you know, getting people to understand that the more that we can cut back and get, like, the demand down too, not just the consumption, the more money that we free up to, for other programs instead of having to cut things.
So this is the, example food service report, and this is Oconomowoc, who presented some of this at the fall conference as well, but they were originally allocating, as I said, $15,000 a year for their food service electricity expenses across their district. You can see in 1 month, they were actually $21,000 for, in this case, their school buildings. I believe it's 5 elementaries, 1 middle and 1 high school. I'm sorry, 2 middles. 4 elementaries, 2 middles, and high school. And so 21,000 of, again, I think it's roughly $60,000 to $70,000 bill. This is the summary page. So when a business, the business officer gets this, they can immediately look at the number, and they will get this. Usually they get this actually before they get the electric bill in the mail that month. So the business officer can pay immediately for this amount out of Fund 50. So it's very easy to use for that side of the school finance. Also though, sometimes especially the facility side likes to dig into the detailed pages. And this would also be the audit trail for DPI. So this is DPI approved method, Fund 50, DPI has approved this method for the entire state. And this is the audit trail, but also this informs certainly nutrition officers, but also facility leads, where are the big costs coming from? And I think, intuitively you kind of know what those pieces of equipment are, but it's interesting to see what are the expenses then associated with those. And then if you're looking at like updating equipment or something, you're gonna be able to evaluate, okay, where is our best return in, say, doing equipment updates in maybe kitchen area. I should also note that when it comes to kitchen, it's not just kitchen, it's actually, when you're talking about food service, let me see if I have an example listed here. You can see we've got there's air handler units. So you can characterize air handler units that serve kitchen and cafeteria as part of this. You can also do all cafeteria lighting and space, so it's not just that kitchen, it's cafeteria and where the food is served. It's air handlers and lighting in those spaces as well that can be included in this. And I think that's where we see that, oh, okay, I forgot about that. And then, of course, the food storage is a very big part of it, where if you've got walk-ins, and let me go back to a situation where you can see they've got some really large walk-ins here that are $1,000 a month, basically, between the two of them. Dishwashers, generally speaking, if you have, in this case, if it was an electric water heater is very expensive as well, as you can imagine. So this just really gives some granular detail, both from an audit standpoint, but also from sort of informing facility group and working with nutrition about, okay, if we're doing upgrades in the kitchen, where do we want to put that money and where we can get the most value coming back? On the third-party facility usage, as I mentioned, we provide a spreadsheet. So that comes back to, and in particular, I can speak to Oconomowoc. If you look at Meadowview Elementary, you can see it's $1,800 of a $7,000 bill. That's a pretty high amount. You say, why is that so high? They actually share that building with YMCA, and so that's considered community, and they're able to levy that money because of the YMCA events. The high school also has a lot of performing arts, and that are considered, again, community in terms of how they code it. And again, every school's different, so we don't tell you how to code it, we just give you the data That's really up to the business officer to decide how it's coded and how it's recovered. But, like for example, at high school, when we integrate with the calendar, it really is a line-by-line item, and you can see in here, there's a lot of theater, there's a youth wrestling tournament, looks like there was a gala, again, but it's all listed, itemized, event by event, and it has an equivalent calendar entry, and again, that's your audit trail, if it's needed for whatever the data is used for. But this is provided to the business officer, and it gives them a lot of flexibility too, because it's a spreadsheet format, so they can allocate and do different things with it that they want to. All right. So I wanted to make sure we left at least a little bit of time for questions. And I think I'll just open it up, to the group to see if, we have questions. Yeah?
What are the hardware needs to do this type of tracking?
Yeah, so the way that this tracking is done is, put in one sub-meter behind the utility meter, and that's all that's required. So, and the way we're able to do that, especially when it gets to the tracking details, is we're able to capture the utility, we will work with the nutritional staff on run times of that equipment, and then we pull in the calendar, the electric bill, and everything else comes in. So rather than a complex, I have to sub-meter my entire school, which is a very expensive endeavor, you know, that could be hundreds of thousands of $1 million. This allows a school to get this in at usually under $10,000 per building and start this process, which then gives a very fast ROI. And typically we see, especially a school that can use all three programs, that ROI is a month or two, and then the school can make money basically immediately out of the gate. So the hardware costs are pretty small for this. Some of you who are kind of the more facilities and engineering side, while that data is not exact when it comes to that electricity usage for like the kitchen equipment, it is much better than what DPI's ever gotten in the past. So really it's an audit trail, and it is informed with data, but it's done in a way that's cheap enough so the schools can really benefit from the data. Other questions? Yeah.
Can you talk about how solar generated power can go after the demand, the peak charges?
Yeah, absolutely. Scott, if it's okay, I'm gonna pull up your annual on this. I think it's a pretty interesting, spreadsheet. Give me a moment, I'll pull this up.
While he's pulling that up, we have a solar array, and on our bills too, you can track when you're working with We Energies or whoever you work with. Our peak demand, our solar generation, they get subtracted, and all of a sudden you've got that new on peak. So for us, it saves us significant dollars, because during our peak time, we had generation of maybe, I don't know, throw out numbers, 20. So when you multiply 20 times 12 months worth of a lot of stuff, so it helps on that aspect.